Working is presented by Maya Strategy Group, a leading market research and strategy consulting firm, helping clients in the pet care and animal health industries navigate strategic challenges for almost 2 decades.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Pet Working. I'm Peter Kenseth, Vice President and Partner at Maya Strategy Group, and I am here today with Poppy Howard-Wall, Event Director for Pet Connect. Back for another year, and excitingly this time after Poppy has had the chance to attend SuperZoo for the first time. So you may have seen a lot of our content. We're still putting out post SuperZoo content on Pet Working on LinkedIn. Make sure you check it out and get our download of the trends and interesting developments and on-site interviews. We'll be doing a similar feature at Pet Connect coming up in December, and Poppy and I are going to talk a lot about Pet Connect and how that conference is going to look. And I had a great time attending last year. Looking forward to it again. LA in December. But first and foremost, given that Poppy was a first-time attendee to SuperZoo this year, I always like to talk to people because that is an experience. It's a lot. I remember the first time I went. It's a huge conference. So is Global in Orlando in March. But SuperZoo is the West Coast equivalent. Always in Las Vegas, always in August. Usually falls right around my birthday. But Poppy, welcome to Pet Working. I'm curious, what were your thoughts? How was SuperZoo for you?
Hi, Peter. Thank you so much for having me back on. I'm excited to be back on the podcast, and I'm excited to be talking to everyone, talking a little bit more about Pet Connect for those that haven't joined us before, or those that may be familiar but want to know more about some of the new stuff we've introduced this year. For those who don't know me, I am the event director of Pet Connect. Pet Connect is taking place in Beverly Hills, Los Angeles, as you correctly point out, in December 2nd to the 4th. The summit, it has been running now for 8 years. It is a 3-day event, and we'll get a little bit more into the details of that as we go. I guess to kick off, I think it's a really unique experience. My role is a lot of how do we make the event as valuable for everyone as possible. There's a little bit of logistical side to that, but primarily I spend my year researching. So I'm a little bit of a market researcher, much like yourself in that way. And I think that really attending from that capacity, trying to learn as much as possible about where this market is heading. I've spent the last sort of 5 months of my life talking to over about 200 people in and around this industry about what they're facing, what their challenges are, the opportunities, everyone from the biggest players in our industry to those emerging and just starting out, ready to disrupt. And I think that going into SuperZoo, it really felt like an interesting opportunity for us to understand how people are gaining value from other events and what maybe missing or what maybe we could be learning. And as well, we were recruiting for our Next 25, a Next 25 program for Pet Connect this year, which I can talk a little bit more about. But overall, I would have to say that the summit is a lot. I think that's really the majority of how I could sum it up in 2 words, I guess, is a lot. There was so many fantastic innovations that pay incredible testament to how this industry is growing, how we're thinking a bit smarter about today's consumer, how the brands are servicing people of my generation and millennials as well, and thinking about the way in which we like to care for our pet companions, pet children, whatever you call them, and
Fur babies.
Fur babies. The terms have gotten almost out of hand, I would say, in this industry. But how we really like to care for pets and the lifestyle element to that as well, I thought was really interesting. I caught up with some amazing people. I was really fortunate to sort of be guided around with Anna Skyer from NIVC, who's on our advisory board, along with Carol Frank, who's managing director of Bird's Eye Advisory, and a number of other of those really closely involved with Pet Connect. We were fortunate enough to attend some of the Purina pitches, so incredible to see the innovation that's coming to market there. And just generally, I found it a really, really useful place to litmus test the industry. I do have to say, as someone who spends a lot of time thinking about curating experience, it's really interesting to see how brands engage, and how vast the floor is. So it's definitely something that we've learned a lot from, and will continue to probably learn about the industry via yourselves and your coverage of that as well. So I enjoyed it overall, and I was pleased to meet so many new people, and definitely a lot of learnings there.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a sharp contrast from what you put on at Pet Connect, and obviously, it's kind of apples and oranges to try to compare the two, other than that they are both pet-focused conferences. But I mean, you're talking over 20,000 people at at SuperZoo. I think more than it's the size of 3 Home Depots, maybe 4 put together. So you're walking. I put it in context. I go every year, and I always bring 3 of my team members with me, and I feel like with 4 of us covering the floor for 3 days, we do an adequate job. Well, I'll give us better than adequate. I think we do a pretty good job of covering everything, but it is, trying to cover it all on your own in 3 days would be next to impossible. Focusing on all the different booths, all the different trends, and it's the other thing I see is, obviously, with the World Pet Association, SuperZoo is very focused, and has historically catered to the neighborhood or independent pet channel. And so it's largely, nutrition focused innovation, treats, toys, hard goods, things that you would buy in a neighborhood pet store. I think in recent years, we've started to see more in the way of wearables, pet trackers, smart litter boxes and things like that. But just from a focus perspective, and when we talked about Pet Connect last year, we really placed a lot of emphasis on the ecosystem. Pet Connect brings in a lot of those other elements that we don't typically see at the nutrition focused shows that are catering to pet retailers, and particularly neighborhood pet and independent pet in general. So, we don't see a lot of pet insurance at SuperZoo or Global Pet. We don't see a lot of diagnostics or veterinary focused. The nutrition sector of pet is still kind of finding its way with how do we use AI? So you're not seeing something where, someone has developed a software solution that can cross-reference disease symptoms and help with veterinarians diagnose conditions. We're not seeing a cheek swab that's going to, like Jaime Paris exhibited last year. We're not seeing that at SuperZoo or Global Pet yet. That's one of the principal differences I saw, and we can certainly get into that a little bit more. But I think, the other thing is that because it is so big and because it's so vast, it really makes it hard to both find time to network effectively and see everything that the conference has to offer. You feel like you're going, and it's an exhilarating and very exciting 3 days. I love going every year, but what I have found traditionally at Pet Connect, because it's smaller, because it's more intentional, there's that opportunity to really sit down and get to know some of the people behind the innovations, to forge those connections, to, I think, what was the total attendance last year? Somewhere around 300 people?
I think we're around 350 this year. It's looking to be around 500.
Okay, so a little, but still, much smaller than 20,000, and
Yes, definitely.
and very curated with panel discussions and dedicated networking breaks where everyone can get together. I found that really valuable, and there's 3 days to do it, and people, I didn't see really anybody. I think as with any conference, you see some people having to take off early on the last day to catch a flight or whatever, but it wasn't like, oh, Friday is a wasted day. You're still having a lot of valuable conversations. Your key decision makers are there, and it's a very executive level audience, which, not to say SuperZoo and Global Pet aren't, but a lot of those executive meetings at SuperZoo and Global Pet are reserved for, meetings with Petco and PetSmart and Amazon and Chewy. And, there's not as much of an opportunity to, forge those connections with people in the space, with investors, with executives at leading companies, because you're, in Las Vegas or Orlando at a gigantic convention center, and unless you have those meetings mapped out in advance, you're not going to facilitate those connections organically like you can through a smaller curated event like Pet Connect. So
I think someone once said to me that they love to use our event. I won't say who it is, but someone once said they love to come and attend our event in December to meet all of the people that they know they need to close at Global. And I think it's a really nice way. It's a really nice way to kind of encapsulate how Pet Connect can be a fantastic accelerator, a catalyst. I think the exposure that brands, and I think any emerging brands and innovators can gain a lot from vast amount of exposure. But I think what we really love to be able to bring the industry is a C-suite meeting, and it is a senior leadership meeting, a C-suite meeting where you can identify, and if you don't know, or maybe you do, but you haven't seen them in a while, and these are very busy people, the right people to help you build the partnerships that then grow. And then you use all of the other touch points throughout the year. And, along with a number of other, obviously, with our content and the learning opportunities. But I really feel that that's a great way to look at it. Of this is the room in which your partners are. This is the room in which other C-suite collaborators, there are buyers. It's not the biggest contingent of our audience, but we do have input from some really fantastic retailers this year, which if people keep an eye on our program and website, they'll be seeing and hearing more about over the coming months. But we're not there to necessarily talk about every single new thing. It's really strategy and partnership, and I think that is a really lovely way to kind of, if you are looking to build partnership, raise investment, or connect with, peers at a similar level and form your strategy, that is what this event is designed for. There are fantastic exposure opportunities to that level of executive within the summit through our innovation showcase, through the pop-up shop, but it's definitely different to voluminous lead generation that you then go through, over the months and months afterwards. It's really targeted key connections, and that's why I think they can complement each other so nicely. Or for those senior leaders who don't always attend but lead buying teams, it can be fantastic to attend that event and attend our event and get an overall view to then instruct their team of, okay, you need to go and look for this and you need to go and look for that when you are at these shows. And that's kind of the level that we want to be providing thought leadership at, and continue to do so that we inform the deals that are done throughout the rest of the year.
Yeah. No, I mean, and I think that's probably why I love it so much, is as a strategy consultant, I love that opportunity to connect with leaders in the space that, I'm not going to have the chance to interact with every day, to get there, see where we can facilitate those connections. Who in my network do I know that could help somebody else out? And again, I keep coming back to it, but it's because it's smaller and because it's more intentional. There are those opportunities to actually really get to know somebody, to sit down and share a meal, have a drink, go on a tour of the modern animal facility together. it is those shared experiences that, make you memorable to somebody, that, versus stopping by somebody's booth and they see, how many hundreds or thousands of people coming by their booth, during the course of a SuperZoo. And obviously that is necessary, that, that's needed. Again, I love going to those events as well, but it's a very different purpose. Not to say you don't make connections there, but they're more serendipitous, and a product to the right person at the right place at the right time than bringing together a cultivated, curated collection of senior level executives and thought leaders in the pet industry. With that being said, Poppy, and I know you mentioned the program is still being cultivated. You're recruiting for the next 25. I know probably all the panel discussions and topics aren't finalized yet, but what jumped out from SuperZoo? What did you see as potential trends that, we're going to continue to explore at Pet Connect leading up to Global in March?
I think one of the things that it sort of validated for me a lot of what I had been thinking about. And one of those key things is really that pet as a consumer vertical has not necessarily always operated in the same way as other consumer verticals, such as beauty. And there are the beauty or fitness, or, you can name like even just human food and those kind of products, the way that they're marketed. And I think that's changing. I think this industry is becoming a lot more sophisticated in its reach to modern pet parents. I think founders now have grasped what the next generation, in a lot of cases, what the next generation, my generation, is looking for from their pet brands, from their pet service providers, and they are leaning in heavily. That is not in small part, partially you can see that through the rise of cat products. It's no secret that we had our Year of the Cat panel last year, and we're going to be running another cat panel this year. We work closely, with Kristen and Jane from Catalyst Council on that, and a number of other fantastic thought leaders in the cat space who have been working on this and, championing how much of a growth opportunity brands can have by leaning into cat for so long. And now that's really being taken seriously. So that was something that I was pleased to see. And thrilled.
We didn't see it as much at Global, but I will say we have returned to that theme of Year of the Cat multiple times on Petworking this year, and I really feel like at SuperZoo, you did see Year of the Cat start to materialize. I mean, we've seen some, we saw some key launches at Global, but the new product section for cat was still much smaller in comparison to dog. And it was large, that was still the case at SuperZoo, but I felt like so many more brands were focusing on, Nulo brought their Gently Cooked line from dog into cat. We saw more and more, cat specific nutrition innovation. We saw a lot more smart litter products. There certainly is, this recognition. We did an episode with Hills this year, World of the Cat Report, and I think directly people have realized, like, look, we can only innovate so much more in dog because dog has led innovation for so long. But cat adoptions are up, whereas every type of dog adoption other than small dog adoptions are down. And more people, I think there's a convenience element because you don't necessarily have to board a cat when you travel. You can just, have an automated feeder or have, a friend come over and put food out every day. They don't necessarily need to supervise the dog. We're seeing that rise in cat ownership, and there's all this white space for innovation. It's like companies are suddenly waking up to it. So yeah, I think that's a great example of where Pet Connect very much influenced something that we have been talking about for the last 9 months.
And I think, kind of following on from your point there, right, that this year we have tailored Pet Connect around 3 tracks. So we get companies, we get founders and C-suite from everyone from, some of the largest companies in the space to like emerging brands, but we also have everyone in between. You may be running a scale-up company that is profitable, that is selling well, but isn't necessarily, a legacy brand in pet, right? And has more expansion opportunity in places to go and more market share to be had. And then you may also be trying to scale your business to the point where you are ready for acquisition and make it as appealing as possible. You may also be at the earlier stages figuring out who you need to know, what you need to know, and how this whole industry comes together and where you can get distribution and what is important to know there. And so we've kind of built 3 tracks into the event, which is our scale smarter, engage pet parents, and unlock profit potential. And I think you don't have to necessarily be early, mid, and late, but it's about your priorities as a business, where you spend your time in the afternoons, within those tracks. And those tracks are going to be covering so many different things. But the engaged pet parent track is so much what you're talking about in terms of responding to market, but it's really meeting the consumer where they are. It's huge in this, and it's huge in this industry. And that was part of the change that I saw. Is I feel like there is a more want from especially emerging brands to not just say, okay, we are the pet food that your dad bought for your dog growing up, and the pet food that you want for this, and the pet food that your vet recommends. Vet recommendation is still so important for brands. I want to be clear on that. But it is really about reaching your customer where they are. How are they, how are you thinking about the way that you tell your brand story? How are you thinking about where you reach your customer? We talked about, me and you, the different platforms that are rising. I think it isn't necessarily tangible in every product you see, but I think coming from my perspective, having seen other consumer industries, and I think there's an awakening of
Oh yeah, it's been going on for a while, and I think to me, 2 of the biggest trends I saw at SuperZoo were you know kibble, which has been the mainstay of the nutrition space for so long. I think is in steadily getting phased out. I mean, exactly what form that is going to take, I think the industry is still a little unsure. But it was hard to find a new kibble launch that didn't at least have freeze-dried inclusions. So you're seeing freeze-dried, maybe you're not feeding it as a whole diet, but, companies forever have been positioning freeze-dried as treat, topper, or meal. Now they're putting it in, with freeze-dried inclusions to make that simpler for the consumer. You don't have to top it anymore. You just pour the kibble out of the bag and the inclusions are there. There's a focus around fresh food, right? And, whether that's going to be the fresh pet model with fresh refrigerated, and we saw Blue Buffalo showcasing their new Love Made Fresh launch, which is going to be very similar to a fresh pet. It's in a tub versus a bag, but it's going to be an owned refrigerator, and they're going to place them in stores just like Fresh Pet has done. And it'll be interesting to see what kind of traction they gain with that. On the other side of it, you see everybody trying to replicate the success that the farmer's dog has had with, fresh frozen that you thaw in the refrigerator. And then some brands kind of pivoting off of that, with a shelf stable fresh, a la like a Nulo gently cooked or a Scott Pet kind of thing. And I don't know that there's any clear winner there. There's all those advantages and disadvantages, but I think what you are seeing, and it kind of ties to what you said, the vet recommendation is still important, but your engaged pet parents are adopting those philosophies of whole food nutrition, of minimally processed is better than excessively processed, and they're going that route. And and the other thing that I thought was very interesting, and it kind of ties to where you said meeting the consumer where they are, is although SuperZoo has historically been focused on catering to neighborhood pet and independent pet, it was very interesting to me to see that there's almost kind of a divergence on brands that are sticking with and doubling down on the neighborhood and independent channel, like your Nulo and Open Farm. And then you see others that are taking a departure from it, like Stella and Chewy, which has been so focused on neighborhood pet for years and years and years, but recently started doing their own D2C and did a little test launch at Meijer and HEB. They didn't even have a booth there. And I can't tell you how, to me, how just disorienting it was, because it's usually one of the biggest booths in the show. It's usually one of the first booths that you see right after you walk in. And I would always use it to find the exit, and not having it like, when I needed to like make my way back out to go to a conference room for a meeting or something like that. It was a little unsettling. I had to find a new landmark, but I mean, it shows, they're testing out a different, path route to market. And I think it's really, there you can make the argument that consumer preference is shifting post-COVID, and that, people are really loving the convenience of getting things on Amazon from AutoShip or Chewy on Auto, or having it delivered from their, or that just isn't big enough, or it has the technology infrastructure to facilitate, same day delivery, or a DoorDash omnichannel like experience. And then you add in the multi-party distribution that it takes to get your product and placed in a neighborhood pet store. And I think a lot of brands are focusing on a digitally native organic D2C and Amazon and Chewy strategy to grow their brand. And it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I think, I don't know, I'll toss my hat in the ring. I think that would be a very interesting discussion topic for Pet Connect. Particularly.
We will be talking about it. We're not shying away from the changes and the where we see the industry going, and I think that's one of the things that we I'd love everyone to know about Pet Connect, really, is that we want to partner with the industry and put our 2 cents in. Of I have a bit of a philosophy that this industry is going to grow even more exponentially over the next few years. But that growth, the limit of that growth is going to be conditional on how quickly brands adopt to being native to the channels where their consumers are. And, I think there is absolutely a role for the neighborhood pet store in the future of pet. But when you think about how you engage with almost any other product in your life, and really, there are few brands that you can't now engage with in that way via a Chewy or an Amazon or one of those other marketplaces, or through their own direct to consumer offerings. And I've loved seeing the ways in which people have done this innovatively. And that's one of the things we want to support brands to continue to do via our educational content at Pet Connect. We're talking social listing strategy. We're talking how you tell your brand story online. We're talking about how you use influencers on a limited budget. Like, these are the nitty-gritty things about growing a brand in the modern environment that we want to help support pet brands to do, while also providing them the partners that can help them do it, the connections, the contacts, the potential, long-term business partner, if that may be, for some nutrition brands, if you want to work with a larger player to help get to that next level, this is the place we want to be at, and to be an engine for the future of growth, and have, let pet parents have all the choices they want, so that pets can ultimately have the best diets and the best offerings for them. I think that's just an outcome that the whole industry is working towards. And, we want to really be an engine for that and help accelerate that growth. Yeah.
No, I mean, again, like I said, I don't think we're at a stage yet where there's necessarily a winner. I think, the industry is in a state of flux. I mean, you look, Blue Buffalo, which, has always been known for, its kibble-based products, launching a fresh made product. Royal Canin launching a fresh made product. Hills acquired Prime 100, fresh made. You know, the big brands, the giants that have, you know, built their businesses on the sale of kibble are recognizing that, you know, there is a new wave of nutrition innovation coming, and that we can feed our pets better than what we have been. And I think that, you know, that's certainly driven by the engaged pet parent. That's driven by the pet parent that, you know, wants more years with their dog or cat and wants more quality years with their dog or cat, but also has, you know, awakened to nutritional realizations in their own life. You know, I think it gets back to the most fundamental rule in pet care innovation is that if you see something in the human sphere that can be extended to pet, it will be extended to pet.
It will be. Yeah.
Wearables, smartwatches, you know, we're seeing those explode. You know, it'll be interesting to see. I always love, you know, seeing that, you know, and I'd love to hear about, you know, if you successfully recruited any members of the next 25 that you can share with us. But I love seeing that next wave of innovation because, you know, it is what keeps driving things forward. I mean, it may not always be perfect the first time, but it's so fascinating to see somebody like Sonia Petkovich with Meowtel, who developed, you know, a cat-specific sitting platform because Rover was catered to dogs. It's, you know, I think Bistro Cat, which was featured last year and the year before, phenomenal innovation. And we had Cecilia on the show. You know, Jaime Paris with Pronova and, you know, at-home diagnostics. Like those are the really cool things to see that you don't necessarily get to see at SuperZoo because, you know, they're not, well, in the case of Bistro Cat, I think we'll probably be seeing Bistro Cat at SuperZoo in years to come. And I did see there was a really cool kind of at-home fresh, like make your own fresh product with in the new product section that I thought was really cool, and then I heard the price tag, and I was like, "Nope." I think it was over $1,000 or something like that.
But you know, I think you've touched on something there because I think there is this personalization trend that is big in luxury across all segments that I think we'll see it come to pet. And you know what? It's not going to be for everyone, but it will be for some. It is for certain consumers, and there are consumers that want that choice. And hey, I would love to see a brand bring personalization at a mass price point. That would be, you know, if anyone's listening and wants to do that or is doing that, let me know, because I think that would be a fantastic offering for the market.
I loved the concept. I was all set to go swing by the booth and figure out how I could get one. And then somebody told me that it was, you know, I was thinking, oh, if I could get this for like, you know, $199, maybe $299. I was looking at it as a cost, you know, savings and feeding my pet better. And then, you know, it was much more expensive. I don't know the price, but I mean, really cool innovation. But again, very nutrition focused, and you know, you're not going to see, you know, some of the other, you know, the in-home diet, some in-home diagnostics. But I think, you know, you do a really good job curating, you know, across all facets of the ecosystem of what's new and innovative. Any cool names that or innovations that you can share that we're going to be seeing in the next 25 at Pet Connect?
I can't give you who has been selected. So our next 25 program is new this year. And what it is doing is that we spend so many hours looking at the market, seeing how things are changing, reading the analysis, you know, watching growth of brands and seeing what's winning. And we sort of realized, like, we talk about it amongst the team here, how innovative some of these companies are, how much we think that who we think is going to end up being bought by who, and what, you know, and where it's heading in that way, and who will be super disruptive. And we were like, hey, why don't, you know, we keep this all to ourselves, our own little predictions. We were like, and we speak with, you know, investors, we use market intelligence programs to formulate this. And we basically identified 25 companies which we think will be disruptive, which we think will see grow, which we think multinationals, might want to keep an eye on. And we approach them to honor their spirit of innovation, to honor the disruption that they're bringing to the industry, and to celebrate that, and also to hold them up as examples for other companies and share their stories. Think about being mentors if they're at that stage. There isn't a threshold for how big you have to be in this. It's more about having a certain je ne sais quoi that we believe makes a brand really successful for the modern consumer, and for those legacy pet parents who are looking for new and exciting innovation and better care. So we identified those 25 companies, and we actually approached them all last week, and the reception has been fantastic. And so we'll be celebrating them at our Pet Connect Awards. We'll also be hosting them for a dinner, and we'll be releasing a press release at the end of this month with all of them profiled. So we'll be more than happy to share that with you and your audience as well.
Yeah, we'll look forward to checking back in, and I'm assuming, given the positive response, we can expect to see all 25 of them at the show.
Yes, you will be able to see all of those selected at the show, and we will be, we'll be letting you know about some of the reasons why they've been selected there as well. So I think that'll be really exciting.
Nice. That's great. That's super exciting.
And when I have more information, I promise I will stop being so coy.
I know we're early. It's early September, and the conference is 3 months away. But I also know time flies. I feel like
incredibly so. And we have got some incredible people involved. We're welcoming Chrissy Long from Modern Animal, who gave us the tour last year. We've got some fantastic innovators like Terry James from Off Leash. We've got the team from Teletails. We've got some representatives from the Mars Veterinary Health Group, as always, and Brendan from that team. We're going to be bringing together. We've got Anna Skyer, who's going to be doing an interview on her exit of Base Paws, and a real sort of in-depth case study with some of the people involved in that deal of how it came together and building a successful pet business for exit. So some really inspiring stories for sophisticated founders. I think, even with other innovation areas, we've got Brandy Kuntzel, who was the winner of the Innovation Prize, of the Purina Innovation Prize, and was also the winner of The Apprentice one year as well. So I won't get into anything with anything political in that, but she was selected as the apprentice under your current president. So you can take from that what you will, but she's building a fantastic platform on behavior. And I think that's a really poignant area that, a lot of the industry is thinking about, especially when it comes to the rise in shelters and those kind of adoptions.
Yeah, I mean, we could do a whole nother episode on rescues and shelter animals and the type of support they need. That's a topic near and dear to my heart. Peony was a rescue, and certainly came with some baggage from being a stray in South Carolina, but she has, I'm not going to say it was easy, but something that one of the things I'm most proud of that I've done in my life is to rehabilitate her and turn her into the dog that she is. And I fully support, those efforts to not only, it's one thing to rescue a dog. It's another thing to help it work through any of the past trauma that it might have had, and really give it a fulfilling and meaningful second chance at life. So I think, those things go so far.
That is just, and I think that is really truly like the definition of being a pet parent, right? It's, building an animal into a place where they can thrive again from such difficult, it's just, I love to hear stories like that. I just think it's so fantastic. And that's why I'm so pleased that we have Brandy and can give her, can hear a little bit more about how she's not only being disruptive as a businesswoman, but also being, having such a large impact on behavior and helping assist pet parents with something that can be really difficult.
Yeah, it really can. And, I know we're coming up on time here, Poppy, but everything we've talked about, it just makes me more excited for Pet Connect in December. I've had it marked in my calendar since I found out the dates, December 2nd through 4th. Really looking forward to being there. Really looking forward to more great conversations. And like you said, I think we'll have to have you back on the show, come November when the program's a little bit more finalized.
Absolutely.
But I think this is a great recap of what we saw at SuperZoo. And I really love your analogy of Pet Connect as kind of a bridge between SuperZoo and Global, and kind of tying that together and then bringing in more of the whole ecosystem. So for anybody who might be on the fence, this is a wholehearted endorsement from me here at Petworking. Sign up, go to Pet Connect. I'd love to meet you. We will be there doing on-site interviews. It's a great time. It definitely, last year was my first time going since you relocated to LA, but really reiterated the value to me, and really excited to be going back this year.
Thank you, Peter. It means a lot to have your endorsement. And I think that, for anyone, we are early. We haven't announced every single speaker, but we have got our agenda online. Our awards nominations are open. Our best in show applications are open. And we will be making new announcements every week. So, and the one thing I do want to add, because this sold out last year, is our innovation and investment pre-day. And if anyone is looking to raise or build new partnerships, the Innovation Investment Pre-Day is tailor-made for investors and start and scale up companies. And we are at 40% capacity. So do not miss your chance. It's filling up. We'll be, we keep sending reminders, but every year we end up with people who are disappointed. So please, if you are thinking of attending, don't wait too long. It's specifically for that day, because we will be full, probably in the next month. So really looking forward to welcoming everyone, welcoming you back, and I'd be thrilled to come back on in November and give you a bit of an update of some of the really exciting stuff going on behind the scenes, as well as let you in on some of those next 25 companies.
Awesome. Well, I can't wait to hear about it. And Poppy, it's always great to see you, at least virtually. And looking forward to catching up again virtually in November, and then seeing you in person at the conference in December. So we will keep you posted, but we'll sign off for now. On behalf of Poppy, everyone, this is Peter Kenseth with Petworking. Thanks for taking the time. Sign up for Pet Connect if you haven't already, and we will see you there. Take care, everyone.